Good evening. I think we can do better than that. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, thank you. My name is Ny Whitaker, and I'm honored to be your moderator for this evening's program. Welcome to the CUNY Graduate Center. Thank you to everyone. I know there was a last-minute change, and we would have preferred to be at the Guttman site, but we exceeded capacity. How wonderful is that on this cold evening? I want to first start off by thanking CUNY Guttman, the NAACP New York State, the NAACP Mid-Manhattan branch for their partnership this evening. I'm excited to see all of you. Go ahead, Kendall. I see our chapter president, please. That is definitely worth an amazing round of applause. And thank you to all of the volunteers that have been here with us, helping people to get civically engaged this evening. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have one more panelist that we're waiting for, and when she comes, she'll join us on the stage. So we're gathered here this evening in the face of rising threats to our democracy, Black leadership, our history, and we are going to remain unapologetically Black in this moment, not only as a call to action, but as an example to the next generation of voters, leaders, and cultural influencers. This Black History Month, I am so proud because my birthday is next week, so I love Black History Month. It is a time for us to reclaim our narrative, to protect our future, and to make 2026 the year of our unapologetic power. So we're gonna get started. First, I would like to invite our president to the stage. And I will say, I have a special place in my heart for CUNY as a CUNY alum, but I am even more honored to be here tonight because the current president of Guttman and I have worked on many a campaign and administrations together. So I love that I get to see her here now in New York in this role, but used to see her many days in DC when we were both working in the White House and in the administration. So congratulations, and can you please join me at the mic to deliver the welcome remarks.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, distinguished speakers. Guttman students, where are you? Woo! Guttman faculty and staff, and a heartfelt welcome to the Guttman Foundation Board Chair, Andre White, and Board Member Marissa Lewis. Wherever you are, please stand or raise your hands. The Foundation Board at Guttman, they are the fiercest supporters of Guttman, so thank you for all the work that you do and your support. Thank you all for joining us for this year's Black History Month. I am so excited to see everyone here because I can't think of a more timely and essential conversation for us to be having. You see, I have served as a public servant for more than 25 years. I have worked for 3 attorney generals, a district attorney, a mayor, a city council speaker, a governor, a US secretary, and a US president. All of this before coming to Guttman. My work as a civil rights attorney shaped my understanding that civil rights are not abstract ideals. They are the foundation of dignity, opportunity, and justice in everyone's life. This truth is reflected in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Of course, right now the Guttman students are like, oh no, she's about to go into a history lesson. One of the most consequential laws in our nation's history. Many view the Civil Rights Act simply as a call to treat each other with respect. But it is so far more than that. The Civil Rights Act outlawed discrimination in employment, education, and public accommodations. Together with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Fair Housing Act that followed of 1968, it dismantled legal systems that restricted voting, limited educational access, blocked economic opportunity, and denied generations of Black Americans the ability to build wealth and live with dignity. Today's event, entitled Unapologetically Black, is not only about identity, it is about understanding that these safeguards exist because generations of advocates refused to be silenced or erased. Tonight's theme honors that legacy and calls us to continue it. Before we begin, I'd like to extend a thanks to a very shy Joshua Brumberg, who's in the back, president of the CUNY Graduate Center. Thank you to you, Josh, and to your team for your partnership and support. And also to our partners in crime, every step of the way, the NAACP. What a history the NAACP has. And thank you for partnering with Guttman to invest in the next generation. A huge thank you to the Guttman team who organized this event today, especially Robert Pagan, Jewel Jones, Gracie Wong, Bao Lin Zhu, and the amazing marketing and communications team led by Karen. It is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Alphonso B. David. Don't forget the B. Alphonso David is a trailblazer who has committed his life to actualizing a more just and equitable world. For more than 2 decades, Alphonso has dedicated his work to uplifting and improving the lives of marginalized communities. Widely recognized as one of the nation's foremost human rights and civil rights leaders, Alphonso's leadership has advanced economic and social justice movements across the United States and globally. On a personal note, Alphonso used to be my boss. We both worked at the Attorney General's office, and don't ask him the type of employee I was because I annoyed him a lot. We worked along with Letitia James, who used to lead the Brooklyn Attorney General's office at that time. But Alphonso and I, we've litigated together, we've drafted legislation together, negotiated budgets. I'm sure our elected official here, Vanessa Gibson, knows what we're talking about, and had extremely heated arguments about grammar. The Oxford comma will forever be. Alphonso is a truth teller whose courage and brilliance embodies what it means to be unapologetically Black. Alphonso reminds us that when one community fights for justice, all communities move closer to freedom. With deep respect and gratitude, please join me in welcoming my brother, Alphonso David.
Thank you, President. I call her De Leon, but thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you this evening. In this room, we have elected officials, academic leaders, business professionals, social justice advocates, students, parents, and many others. All of you with power. But we confront a machine that tries to convince you otherwise. It appears that we're in a new space, a radical, unmoored, and disparate and desperate environment of chaos. Black journalists being arrested for reporting the news. Immigrant communities being thrown in cages and denied their basic constitutional and human rights because of their race and ethnicity. Black and brown people being told and shown that their blackness and their brownness are liabilities. Women being demoralized and being denied their basic rights to bodily integrity. Our national elections facing ongoing threats of being federalized in violation of current federal law. There's a purpose to all of this chaos: to confuse you, to instill fear, to rob you of your power, to make you believe that the world has changed and you have no meaningful role in it. So you start asking yourself the quiet part out loud. Why would I risk anything? Why would I risk myself? Why would I volunteer to help? Why would I raise my voice? Being unapologetically Black is not about provocation. It's about truth. It's about refusing to make ourselves smaller to make others more comfortable. It's about honoring the full weight of our history, our brilliance, and our right to shape the future without permission and without apology. This moment requires a willingness to engage in the unvarnished truth, embrace practical strategies, and most importantly, to be brave. As you heard, I'm a civil rights attorney. I've been practicing for more than 2 decades. I've been in the private sector, the public sector, the not-for-profit sector. I've done litigation, policy, and advocacy. And now I run the Global Black Economic Forum, which is a global enterprise focused on advancing economic opportunity and for marginalized communities around the world. We focus on global summits, leadership development, policy, and litigation. Recently, I had the privilege of representing a Black woman in Georgia, successfully defending the Fearless Fund. This was a company that was at risk of having to shut down. They were sued for essentially providing support to other people of color. And when I litigated the case, I kept reminding people this was not about defending a Black woman who was running a venture capital fund. It was about whether we have the power and the freedom to invest in our communities. And that case serves as a reminder that we must position ourselves with clarity and with courage in the middle of shifting sands. We are living through a rapid and a fundamental attempt to restructure both our social and our political landscapes. In this country, we see challenges to democratic norms and institutions. We see targeted attacks to diversity initiatives. We see threats to free and fair elections. We see an erosion of trust in leadership. At the same time, we're seeing a counterflex. We're seeing an emerging infrastructure across sectors that are calling for racial justice and economic opportunity. Inspiration in this moment is not about ignoring the storms. It's about standing in them, positioning ourselves with vision and charting paths forward with purpose. When we talk about positioning, I want to emphasize this. Clarity of values matters more than certainty of outcomes. We may not know whether the National Guard is going to be sitting at the voting booths in November. We may not know where every policy battle, every market disruption will lead. But we can define how we show up with resilience, reinvention, and a commitment to impact. And by showing up with clarity, we increase the impact of our communities, and we honor the legacy of our ancestors. For all of us navigating this moment, that means asking yourselves, how do I align my purpose with the needs of this moment? How do I lead in ways that are not only strategic, but also deeply humane? The answer often lies in acknowledging that leading well requires both protecting our capacities and protecting our communities. The forced restructuring that we are experiencing right now is not abstract. It has real consequences. The attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion are increasing workplace discrimination as we all sit here. The political polarization is fueling laws that threaten our freedoms and our access to opportunity. But here is the sometimes imperceptible and unrecognized truth. Amid all of these pressures, we hold power. Just as I've seen in courtrooms and boardrooms across the globe, change is possible when we refuse to relinquish our position and we move strategically. When we invest in ourselves and develop structural reforms, we're not only resisting injustice, we're actively building a different future. So when I say we, I mean we. I don't mean you, and I don't mean me. We must shift from the politics of the self to the politics of the community. We say that in theory. We say that on some of our websites, but we don't always follow through. And why is that? That's because we have been trained to believe that when we collaborate, we may lose something. But collaboration truly is the only way to success. So I ask each of you tonight to reflect. What role are you willing to play in this shifting landscape? Maybe it's mentoring the next leader. Maybe it's driving for policy change. Maybe it's asking for help from someone who's already been there. Every action, no matter how small it may feel, contributes to the architecture of a future where social and economic justice are sustainable realities, not just fragile promises. The unseen detractor wants you to believe that small actions have no impact, when in fact, small actions by a very few people can change the world. So as I close, I'll say that we stand here at a crossroads where leadership is being tested. We have to be intentional. We have to be strategic. We have to be bold. And we have to be deeply grounded in who we are. To be unapologetically Black in this moment is to reclaim our narrative, protect our history, and exercise power without waiting for permission, especially as our democracy and our leadership are both under attack. Change will not wait for us to be comfortable. It requires us to be clear, resilient, and purposeful. As you think about this moment, please remember that leadership is not simply about managing a transition. It's about inspiring it. We may not know what it looks like, but we have to dream it. It's about positioning ourselves in alignment with values that would outlast the noise of this moment. It's about recognizing that our collective strengths, our networks, our voices, our commitment can and will redefine what justice and opportunity looks like for generations yet to come. The stakes are very high. You know it, and I know it. But I also know that our capacity to lead is stronger. To lead with purpose in this moment is what we all should be doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Alphonso has to get to another appointment, but similar to the previous speaker, I had the honor of working with Alphonso in the governor's office, and I know that he is a tried and true champion. So many of you may be wondering why two of our speakers are missing. The Attorney General, Letitia James, and former Speaker of the City Council, Adrienne Adams, have been called to Syracuse. I hope many of you have seen the news. There was an announcement that former Speaker Adrienne Adams has been selected as Governor Hochul's candidate running mate for Lieutenant Governor. And our Attorney General and she and many of the other leaders are headed to the New York State Democratic Convention, where our Attorney General will be one of the people who will nominate her from the floor. So we are excited that Alphonso Davis was able to come and to be our featured keynote, and we have added the Brooklyn Borough President, the first Black woman to be, Bronx Borough President, the first Black woman to be Bronx Borough President. I'm channeling the Brooklyn here because we have two panelists who are from Brooklyn, one of which is on her way. But the first Black woman to be Bronx Borough President, Vanessa Gibson, has joined us. So as Alphonso mentioned, it is time for us to be bold and to be unapologetically Black. One of our fiercest champions is our Attorney General, Letitia James. They have Project 2025, we have Project 2026. So the Attorney General apologizes for her absence, but she has sent a video that we are going to share with you now. Hopefully the guys in the tech booth can cue her message.
Hello and good evening, everyone. And thank you to Sister Ny Whitaker for that kind introduction. And thank you to President Elizabeth D. Leon Boragava and my dear sister L. Joy Williams from Brooklyn, and who is the New York City chapter of the NAACP for bringing us together this evening. We gather here not only to remember and pay homage to our ancestors and shared history as Black Americans, but also to make an unapologetically Black call to action for Black America and to protect our children's future. This means calling on our community to defend all the social and economic progress we have made as Black people over the past century and beyond. My friends, there is a clear effort to undermine our democracy and erase our history and victories as Black Americans. Our literal citizenship as Black Americans is under threat, as this administration tries to take us back to Jim Crow era conditions. From its anti-DEI campaign to brazen efforts to undermine our voting rights, anti-discrimination laws, and civil rights across the board, to economic policies which has resulted in more than 300,000 Black women losing their jobs and a 25% spike in Black unemployment. The Trump administration has been devastating for Black America, and it's just getting started. So what does all of this mean for us as a people? For me, as a state's legal officer and as your sister in this struggle, it means working closely with other Democratic state attorneys general across the country to fight this administration's actions at every turn. And I assure you, my team at the Office of the Attorney General and I are doing this relentlessly. And for us as Black citizens, it means we must bring the same energy and unity of purpose to this fight against overt and systemic racism as our ancestors not just 60 or 7 years ago, but 2 centuries ago did. Because we are dealing with people at the highest level of government who embrace the same racist, Confederate ideology our ancestors battled during the 19th century. And they are just as determined to drag us back to a post-Reconstruction era society as their ancestors were to keep us there. But we won't let them. The fight for civil rights and racial justice is not easy. It takes patience, courage, and determination. But I am not fearful because I have faith in the wisdom of my ancestors and faith in all of you. And I know that faith and fear cannot exist together. And just as Mother Harriet Tubman knew when she urged the enslaved Africans to stay on the course to freedom even when they grew weary, if you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. Because they're shouting after you keep going. Don't ever stop, keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going. Today, we are the most fervent hopes of the unapologetically Black Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks, and so many more. The living beneficiaries of the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President Barack Obama, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So as we celebrate Black History Month 2026, let us be inspired by the courage of our ancestors and a faith that teaches us to pursue justice, even when the path is hard and our strength is tested. Let's keep going, brothers and sisters, and I will be by your side every step along the way. No justice, no peace. Thank you.
So I'm going to call out a few names And after each name, I want to invite you all to say Unapologetically Black. Letitia James. Vanessa Gibson. I'm so sorry, you said BX, we got an X going on? Okay, okay. Harriet Tubman. Martin Luther King Jr. W.B. Du Bois. Arturo Schomburg. Hazel Dukes. The late, great Congressman Charlie Rangel. Awesome. Hakeem Jeffries. And we've just been joined by L. Joy Williams, who is also unapologetically Black. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get our panel started. Let's all check our mics for a moment, make sure they're working. You've got one.
Mic check, mic check.
1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, check.
Unapologetically Black.
We are. And then some. Hey, L-Joy.
Hi.
Good evening, everyone. We are here now to start our panel for this evening. This fierce and fabulous panel of Black women leaders who are all unapologetically Black and who I am proud to say are each my sisters along this journey. I often say if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and our rights and our freedoms are on the menu and on the ballot this year in 2026. Civil rights is not a spectator sport. We have to be in it all day, every day. We have to show up for every race, for every election, for every petitioning, for every hearing, for every community board meeting. We have to be present and make sure that our voices are heard and bring everyone with us, because it's up to us. There's no more waiting for Superman. It's up to us to save our humanity, our sanity, and our democracy. So we're gonna have a little bit of a conversation. We've got some questions for each of our speakers, and then we'll open it up for some questions from the public. So get your thoughts ready. So first and foremost, I'm gonna do a little bit of a bounce around, and I would like to give each of you just a quick moment to introduce yourselves. I will start with L-Joy, and then we'll kind of wrap back around, and then start our questions and conversations.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Let me hear some noise for the NAACP members in the building. I know anywhere that I go, there are NAACP members in the building, and if you are not yet a member of NAACP, don't feel left out. You can see any of those folks that made some noise and ask them about membership, because we are on the road to get to 25,000 members strong here in the state of New York before the end of the year. And if you hadn't known by now, my name is L. Joy Williams, and I am president of the NAACP New York State Conference, representing 55 adult branches and about 14 youth council and college chapters across the state. My background can be summed up as just plain civic engagement. From all of the work that I have done as a political consultant and strategist, to working with Higher Heights for America to help uplift and elect Black women across the country, to leading Brooklyn NAACP for over a decade and building that branch up to well over close to 1,500 people, intergenerational leadership across the borough of Brooklyn. And I am super honored and proud to now lead the state conference so that we can take that intergenerational leadership that is connected to our history, right? We don't want to throw away older people, and we don't want to just replace them with younger people who don't know nothing. We come from a tradition and a people who believe in intergenerational leadership, intergenerational families, and intergenerational communities. And that should be reflected in the organizations that are leading and are at the forefront of our advocacy and civic engagement. And we invite you to join NAACP to be a part of that, where our job is to advocate, agitate, and litigate on behalf of Black people.
Amen.
Good evening, everybody. For all of you who love Black people unapologetically, please make some noise. My name is Lurie Daniel-Favors. I'm the executive director. Thank you, thank you. I am the executive director at the Center for Law and Social Justice at the Medgar Evers College, and it is my privilege to be here. I'm also the host of the Lurie Daniel-Favors Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. And at the Center for Law and Social Justice, we envision a civically engaged and sophisticated Black electorate that is connected such that we are able to use our resources and to secure the representation that we need in order to thrive. We are celebrating our 40th year. And this is a time, you know, somebody was in the desert for, 40 days and 40 nights? Some people wandered in the desert for 40 years. And so what we have come upon in this moment is a recognition that we are reliving history. They often say that history repeats, some say that it rhymes, and the reality is if you see what's happening right now, if you know a little bit of our history in this country, it feels very familiar. This should not be shocking or surprising to anybody. And so I am extraordinarily grateful that we're going to be able to have this conversation this evening. I will give you a word of warning. It has been said that when I am invited to speak somewhere, I don't ever care if I'm invited back. So I do speak very intentionally. I am unapologetic through and through, and so please know that if I say some things this evening that prick your conscience, that stir you to move, just know it's said in love. It was intentional, and I pray the ancestors nourish whatever seeds were dropped in the conversation this evening.
Amen. I'm going to go to Vanessa.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, let me say happy Black History Month. 100 years. We are celebrating Black excellence. And we are reminded every day that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams and all of their hopes and all of their aspirations. I bring you greetings from the great borough of the Bronx. Boogie down. I am proud to serve as the 14th Bronx Borough President, Vanessa L. Gibson, and I am grateful to be here among family, friends, and community for such an important recognition of Black History Month. I have to acknowledge Guttman Community College and all of my friends, our president, and everyone who brought us together tonight. To my sister, Ny Whitaker, God bless you. To Lurie, God bless you and L. Joy. To the NAACP, to the entire New York State Conference, and the Mid-Manhattan branch. And I got to recognize, if it's all right, L. Joy, my co-op city branch in Parkchester and Bronx. And really each and every one of you, like hearing the voice and just incredible words by Alphonso David. I'm sitting here emotional. Hearing our Attorney General Letitia James speak, it just reminds me of so much progress that we have made as a people. And being here in this space is so significant for so many reasons. And I'm proud to be on this panel tonight. And I told Nye, I am always willing to step into the role of my big sister, our AG, and my sister, Adrienne Adams, our future LG. Amen. I love that, right? Yep. AG and LG sounds all right to me.
Amen to that.
So I am serving in my second term as Bronx Borough President, and I was first elected in 2021 after I finished my 2 four-year terms in the New York City Council. I served for 8 years under the Bill de Blasio administration. I was leaving the New York State Assembly after serving for 4 years there, and then went to the City Council, and then ran for Borough President in 2021 with my mind made up and a plan and a purpose, knowing the odds were stacked against me, knowing that the Bronx had never elected an African American nor a woman in 100 plus years. And we ran a race on integrity, on a proven record, on success, and we won. And we made history. So it is an honor to be here, and even 4 years later, as I galvanized and brought communities together in my 4 years serving, ran for re-election last year in 2025, had a major primary election, and people still counted this Black woman out. And I can tell you that not only did we win, but we won all across the Bronx, our primary and my general. So here I am starting my second term and making sure that we fulfill our agenda with commitment, with dedication, with determination, with intention and purpose. All of the words that Alphonso said, that was perfect because I resonate so much with everything he talked about, with being intentional, with doing things purposefully, driven by the fundamental understanding that Black Americans deserve everything. We deserve each and every opportunity that we should be afforded. And so it's an honor to be here. While I have been serving as an elected official for over 15 years, I remain humble. And I know that as quickly as I may have risen, I know that there are opportunities where that may not always happen. And so I realize in this moment that I am a role model, that people are looking up to me, and I strive to be the very best borough president that I can every day for 1.5 million residents of the Bronx. So I thank you all for having me tonight.
Thank you. So now that you have a sense of these amazing unapologetically Black women and the amazing work that they do, we're going to have a little bit of conversation about where we are, where we're going, and what comes next. So first, we have to start with facts, because we live in a place, in a space where chaos is the purpose of the kind of nonsense that's going on right now. Pain is the purpose, chaos is the purpose. We're flooded with misinformation and disinformation. So I want to start with the facts. What is going on? What is the state of our legal system right now? Many of us were taught that the legal system, our democracy, would come to bear should there ever be a challenge to our Constitution. However, many of us know that the Constitution really was not written with us included. And by us, I mean African Americans. By us, I mean women. So, of course, I'm going to turn to our very astute legal mind on the panel to give us an overview of why is this system that we've all been taught to revere failing us right now.
Because the Confederate soldiers were never punished, and they were allowed to re-enter the Union and assume positions of power at the end of the Civil War, and essentially unleash a second wave of white narcissism and white nationalism across the country. They were installed back into office. It was as if the treasonous acts of betraying the nation so that you could fight for the right, yes, states' rights. I always like to say states' rights to do what? Own Black people. And because they were never punished, and because they were allowed to be brought back into the Union, and because at the end of the 1877, just a little bit of history. Civil War ends in 1865. There's a brief 12-year period from 1865 to 1877 known as Reconstruction. Anybody familiar with this phase? Okay, so Reconstruction, as we know, is really Integration 1.0. And it was a wonderful 12-year, very brief experiment. We got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, the abolishment of slavery unless you've been convicted of a crime, while at the same time, they were passing Black codes, which were really the slave codes that were revised and turned into Black codes because you couldn't be a slave anymore. We had just fought a whole Civil War. And so when those Black codes were put back into place and Black people were the only ones who could be punished by them, and you now had this escape hatch to where you can have slavery if you have been convicted of a crime, well, that just reified that the 4 million people who had just freed themselves vis-a-vis the Civil War were now re-enslavable. And when in 1877 there was a compromise, because often what we see throughout our history is that the powers of whiteness, regardless of power, because white nationalism does not limit itself to political party, when there is a feeling, and one of my dear professors, Derek Bell, may he rest in peace, a phenomenal ancestor, he has a theory known as interest convergence. And interest convergence theory says that throughout the history of this country, white Americans have been willing to support the expansion and the advancement of Black rights only at the point that they see that it will benefit them, where the interests converge. Once you have reached the point where there is an accepted notion within the white American community that those interests no longer converge, or that by continuing to further the interests of Black people, you're going to detract from the powers of whiteness, that's when the interests diverge. That happened in 1877. They were tired of it, they were over it, and the Northern troops pulled out. The South was able to be unleashed. We saw Jim Crow. We saw a period known as the nadir, which they said was worse than slavery. And that, we had a Civil Rights Act in the 1860s. We had the Ku Klux Klan Act, which the only people who seem to be getting charged with violating the Ku Klux Klan Act are black journalists who are speaking truth to power. Shout out to Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And so, when that is the reality, and when that is how the nation began, continues, and is perpetuating itself now, it really makes perfect sense when you see the exact same things happening right now. I'll give you one more example. 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina. It was a beautiful moment where even beyond the limitations of Reconstruction, you still had integration in the South. Wilmington, North Carolina is a port city. It was where they had this thing called the Fusion Party. You had poor black people, formerly enslaved and free blacks. You had poor white people. You had indigenous, all working together in another bout of integrated collection. And they had been getting people elected. They were using their vote effectively, and they were moving forward. And the white nationalist interests could not tolerate it. They rode into town in the election day of 1898 after these folks had won and were being sworn in and said, you can leave by your own feet or your body can be added to the bodies of the black folks who are already in the river. And they didn't say black folks. You can imagine the words that they used. And that happened in 1898. And that coup, where they came in and took those people who had just won elections out of office, do you know what happened? Nothing. The person who was in charge of rallying the more than 200 white men who came in on horses with guns, he became the next mayor. So when you're dealing with this reality, and when we have a Daughters of the Confederacy approach to history, Moms for Liberty approach to history, right? When you see the exact same elements repeating themselves and reifying themselves, and you also see a Congress who is willing to look the other way and not do what is necessary to check white nationalism in it, and I don't mean in any particular party, I mean generally, the exact same elements that destroyed Reconstruction have been unleashed. And if we're not going to have an honest conversation about that, well, then yes, we can be confused. But as soon as you know the history, all of this is easy.
Which brings us to the reason why they are trying to erase our history. It's really interesting, people were saying that they feel exhausted or they feel in a little bit of a haze. And as somebody whose family has roots in North Carolina and knows the story very well, and also indigenous roots in North Carolina, my family said, it's just our DNA waking up. We've been here before. And so many of us are feeling a little bit of exhaustion, or we're feeling a little bit of deja vu. And it does seem true that we've been here before, hence your point. And if you know your history, then you know that the pendulum swings. And so what is the NAACP doing at this moment in time to address this attack, this rolling back of our rights, but also the unveiling of racism in our nation? Many might think it's just a different face and a different lens. But as you said, this is intergenerational. We have much wisdom to tap into to teach others on how we fight back.
Well, let me just say that, they don't do a lot to keep us together, right? Like, they don't. Because when Lurie gives, and, in both of our shows, we talk about knowing the history is important. One, because it gives you the tools and unlocks, as you were saying, the DNA, and being able to go back and look, what's the song, How We Got Over? To understand how we got to the next step of freedom and liberation. And that is a process. The one lesson that we have to really sink into our spirit is that as we are fighting for justice, for equity, for overall liberation, that there is no end point. That's right. There is no end point. There is no resting, we accomplished it, let's ring the bell and we're done. Because racism is a cancer. Sexism is a cancer. White supremacy is a cancer. And so it requires us to be ever vigilant in how we are responding to, but also how we are moving forward. So the question you are asking about what the NAACP is doing. A couple of months ago, when the administration came after our Attorney General, And a number of folks gathered together, and sure, like so many other NAACP leaders and black women, everybody was saying, what are we gonna do? What are we doing? We have to protect Tish. We have to, right? Everybody was doing that, right? And one of the things that I said to our membership is, in the period that we are in, yes, we want to protect black women, and we are going to protect Tish because she has protected us, right? But also, we have to change our language from fight back to fight forward. Because if we are just responding to what is on the table right now, you are missing all of the tricks that they have in the bag on the side and on the floor. And so we have to take that history and know, oh, they want to destabilize elections. Oh, they want to make it, to suppress people and no longer have faith in the institution, in the government, so that they can continue to rule, right? What does that lead to, right? What the examples, what came next after we got the Civil Rights Act, whether it's in the 1800s or the 1900s? To be able to look at the patterns, because they're not that, bright. To look at the patterns and be able to look forward and see, okay, how do we defend our lives now? How do we defend and participate now? But also looking ahead to the next steps. Who do we need to send in advance to build the next thing over there so that when we get to that point that we are not caught flat-footed? And how I describe it is, I watch a lot of old documentaries and old movies, and you may have seen, because this is back when History Channel used to do actual history, and the documentaries they had about the Crusades. And they would do the mock battles. And they would show the fighters that had those big shields that they would send ahead. That was the first infantry that they sent ahead. And the shields seemingly went from the top of their heads all the way down, right? All the way down to the ground. And then the horses and then, the artillery, everything was behind them. Well, the reason why they were there is because the shields helped them to protect the archery and all of the other fields that were behind them. But what did they do? They also moved forward every few feet. And so they were gaining ground and pushing forward. So how are we also pushing forward in this moment? So when you ask what NAACP is doing, we are advocating on the local and the state level, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. We are agitating in the places where it is not friendly, which may be Western New York, maybe upstate New York, maybe Long Island, sometimes maybe the Bronx, right? That we are agitating to ensure black people are getting their just due. And then when it comes down to it, we are litigating. Right now, we have, I believe, about 5 lawsuits going on at this current time. Our branch in Syracuse is suing the administration because of the ending of the, what's the thing, the police department and the fire department for their diverse, the fire department. Right? So they're suing there. We are suing and intervened on the lawsuit where the Trump administration wants New York's voter roll unredacted, full Social Security numbers and your driver's license. Did you know that? So we're intervening on that. We just announced last week we're suing the NYPD again because they're stopping black and brown drivers more than they are anybody else in the city when 94% of the stops produce no guns. So why are you stopping people? Right? So our job is to advocate, agitate, and litigate. But at the same time, how are we building the political infrastructure, right? Because everybody knows the line that people have been using, oh, we're losing black power in New York. More people are leaving New York, which is true from an affordability standpoint. But how are black people losing power when the AG, when the LG, when the mayors, when the Speaker of the House, when the Speaker of the Senate are all black leadership, right? And in county leadership, and you cannot win an election in New York State, in New York City, without the base of black voters. voters. And so if you can win with the people who are already voting, imagine what we can do collectively when we get the folks who choose couch on a regular basis. And so what NAACP is doing is going out to teach and train and swell our numbers, not only in the NAACP, but also to take those infrequent voters and turn them into primary voters, the next generation of primary voters here in the state of New York, not so they can just vote for somebody every 4 years that somebody else chooses, but so that they can be civically engaged in their communities. Because the last point I will make is our ancestors, when we love to use that line, they died for our right to vote. It is not that simple. The folks who were organizing in Mississippi and Louisiana, they had already proven that they can build cities and towns and businesses and empires. They wanted to have a say in who the sheriff was so they can make sure he wasn't from the Klan. They wanted a say in who the governor was and who the legislature, who was in the legislature, to make sure the taxes they were being sent would come back to their schools, would come back to their fire departments, would come back to their communities. That organizing was local, because they wanted control over what they had built and what they wanted to leave to their children and future generations. So instead of us focusing all of our time on what is happening on the federal level, we need to get back to what our ancestors told us, and is make sure you have control of your house first.
Thank you so much. And because all politics is local, there's two ways to address it, right? One is fighting outside of the space, and one is fighting from inside of the space. So I'm gonna go to our Bronx Borough President. Vanessa, you decided at a very young age to learn about the inner workings of government and how you could fight for Black Americans from inside the system. So can you talk a little about your journey from intern to now Bronx Borough President?
Sure. So I will say that I was so privileged that God allowed me to cross paths with an incredible woman from the Boogie Down named Aurelia Green. I was an intern in the New York State Assembly program in 2001. I'm not afraid to say it. Celebrating my 25th anniversary of graduating from college, and I'm proud of it. And I went to UAlbany, and I didn't know about the New York State Legislature a lot, right? And this internship exposed me to so much that I never could have imagined. And myself and two friends, we all interned. I was assigned to work for Aurelia Green, who was from the Bronx. And I can honestly say it was the best interaction, the best connection I could have ever dreamed for. She took my hand as she climbed. She lifted me up with her. She allowed me to learn from her, to make mistakes, and she really groomed me. I did all of her work as a member of the New York State Assembly. She was a seasoned member. She ultimately had a number of committees like banking. She did a lot of work in the subprime mortgage lending industry, and she ultimately rose to be the Speaker pro temp, the first Black woman to ever serve in that role. And as I finished my internship, I graduated with my degree, and then I needed a job like many college grads. And she gave me a job. I worked for her in the Albany office in the LOB, and then I would commute ultimately once I finished the role that she had for me in the Albany office. She said, I need you to go and run my district office in the Bronx on the Grand Concourse. And that's what I did. And my first challenge was I was in my early 20s, and all of the staff in the Bronx were all older servants. And I had to learn from them, but I still had to be a leader as well because I was the office manager. And that was a transition, right? I'm young, I'm learning. I need to learn from staff, but I also need to set a standard of what leadership is about. And I was able to do that, and I worked for her for several years. And then in 2009, I'm going back to school. I went to CUNY Baruch to get my master's degree, SUNY and CUNY, and I was preparing to graduate. And I didn't know that Ruben Diaz Jr., who was an assemblyman from Soundview, would decide to run for an open seat when Adolfo Carrion went to work for President Obama at HUD. And he left the borough president's seat. There became a vacancy. Ruben decided to run. We ran his campaign. The election was April 21st, 2009. He won. And then he asked Aurelia to serve as his deputy. So she, being a woman of God, she said, God said it's time, I'm leaving Albany, and I'm going to serve as deputy. And that created a vacancy. And who do you think she looked to succeed her? She asked me. And I felt so privileged because I didn't think, as a young college grad, I didn't think I had the ability to do it. And I felt so insecure, but she said, I've trained you and I've groomed you, and I see a lot of myself in you when I was your age, and I know you can do this. She had so much confidence in me, I couldn't say no. And I, at this point, got my master's degree that she encouraged me to go back to school for, to push me, and now as a leader, I push my staff to do the same, to get a higher education. And she added her name, and I won that special June 2nd, 2009. I got elected to the State Assembly, and honestly, fast forward, and here I am today. Yep.
In a similar office.
Yes, it's been incredible.
So just kind of reflect on what it's like to be inside the system, watching what's going on in our communities, and kind of how you can use the levers of, our government and city agencies and even state agencies to help improve our communities and try to address some of our most, pressing challenges in society.
Absolutely. So let me say first, I don't look at this work as a job. I look at it as a calling. I truly believe I'm called to serve for this moment, for this time, this reason and season. And it's important for me to show up differently, to do something different and think creatively outside of the box, knowing that the old way no longer works, knowing that you have to be a balanced leader who understands your role, your priorities that define your work, your values, your principles, what's important to you. And you cannot let people compromise you on that. In politics, there are so many efforts to change who we are as people. Folks want you to be on one side versus another side, have this position. I always say, have some values and stand up for something. It's so easy in this work for people to change their mind. They're on both sides. They play both sides of the conversation. You have to have principles. You have to stand for something, or you will truly fall for anything. And that's one thing that Aurelia and my mom always taught me. Never change who you are, and never doubt the spaces that you will step in. And being a history maker is great. Being the first is amazing, but it's equally as important for me to make sure that I'm not the last, because I'm all about legacy. I'm all about raising standards, and I'm all about showing up, and I'm all about impact. What is the work that I'm doing for this time going to leave behind, right? I am purposeful in this work. I am intentional. I don't do anything without a reason, because I know what past electeds have done. I know how people have had broken promises. And people, honestly, folks, come up to me all the time, older black men and women, predominantly black women, and they cry because they are so excited to see someone that looks like them as their borough president. They've lived their entire lives in the Bronx, lived through every effort, every epidemic, every crisis, and they're still in the Bronx because they see promise, and they still have hope. They still believe, they still trust that people will show up in a real way. That resonates with me. I don't want to be forgettable. I want to be memorable. I want to leave a legacy behind for our children. I want their obstacles to be lessened because of what I endure, and I endure a lot. Black women endure a lot.
Amen.
And even now, I can tell you, as an elected official for all this time, people still talk to me different, they still treat me different, and I will push back, because you are not going to minimize my work, you're not going to devalue me, and you are not going to let me feel as if I don't belong. And as someone who sits at many tables, like my sisters, and sometimes, years ago, I used to feel inferior, like I didn't belong. I would turn to my left and right, and no one would look like me. And I felt funny. But over these years, as I have learned, you can't tell me nothing. Because not only do I belong at that table, but I am representing my people and my ancestors. And so it's important for me to make sure, as I talk to young people and I encourage them, I tell them, there will be moments in your life when you will sit at a table and you may not feel worthy. Don't doubt that you don't belong at that table. But the reason why you are at that table for that time is because you have been chosen for that moment to shatter the glass ceiling so that someone else that looks like you can join you at that table. Amen. Right? This is purposeful. And the final thing I'll say is, over my years, I've learned that this work is about balance, right? And that's one thing I admit that I struggle with. I go everywhere. I am really outside because I like to show up. I know what me showing up means for people. And I'm not one of those that has to have a minimum 100 people. I'll show up to an event with 10 people, because those 10 people will be my biggest champions, my biggest credible messengers. They will be my soldiers on the ground, and they will mobilize and get me 100 people and 200. And so I'm not afraid to show up. I just think I show up too much, and I'm really trying to put balance in this work. But as someone who has term limits, right, I recognize I have 4 years. I'm trying to do as much as I can with the time I have so that I can have the greatest impact.
Amen to that. I just want to lean into something that she just said. There's this theory of imposter syndrome. As an NYU professor, I hear students say it all the time. I had the honor of working, for President Obama. He never believed in that. I don't believe in that. I think that we come from kings and queens, and so there's no room that we can't be in. There's no challenge we can't overcome once we set our mind to it. But I do want to talk about the erasure of our history and our curriculum specifically, being that we are in an institution of higher learning. What can we be doing to make sure that we don't allow them to erase our history? And not only in our classrooms, but also in our homes, in our communities. I'm going to stay with you for 1 minute because you do have an amazing class on advocacy that you guys teach that kind of bridges the gap between our history and kind of this moment. And so if you could speak a little bit about that work at Medgar Evers, that would be great.
So you're talking about Advocacy Academy, and Advocacy Academy is an 11-week virtual course because as an attorney running a social justice, civil rights law center, one of the things we recognize is that the temperament of the courts is shifting. And we saw this early on in my tenure when I got there. I can't believe I've been there 10 years now. Yeah, I know. I only recently ED, but was there as general counsel. And one of the things we realized was that even if we go into court and we fight all the fights, we win all the lawsuits, and we do all the things, I've got colleagues working at LDF. Shout out to LDF. I've got colleagues there who, yes, who are still defending consent decrees that they got decades ago. And what we realize is that the law has a very important role of creating conditions on the ground so that the true transformation can come through the hearts of the people. I have a neighbor by the name of Miss Chambers. Shout out to Best Thigh. And Miss Chambers has been on the block 11 years, like easily 11 years. And she not only has seen the block come and go and change and shift, she's got really good ideas about, well, if you would just do A, B, and C, them boys would have everything that they need. And she's got all these amazing ideas, like so many of the people in our community. She just doesn't know necessarily how to get the ideas out of her heart and into manifestation. And so Advocacy Academy, taught by the amazing, dynamic Celeste Morris, who we revere her so greatly. In fact, remember WeBo, Workshops and Business Opportunities, and she taught our class? Yeah. I love this woman. But so she is phenomenal, and she is able to, we basically consider ourselves the doula for your social justice dream. Whatever dream you are birthing, whatever solutions you have, you just need support. In 11 weeks, you will understand how to organize an issue campaign, you'll understand how to put together a budget, how to engage your elected officials, how to get other people on your side. You will have to do a presentation because justice requires your voice, and you will have to produce a paper because justice requires your ability to be not just oral, but literate. And so it's an amazing program. We actually will be launching the next iteration on March 10th. So if you go to our website, clsj.org, you can find information there. The website is not yet fully updated. Give us some time. We are a small and mighty team, but our website updating system is going through some things right now. But clsj.org, and you can email us at info@clsj.org as well. When it comes to education, however, beyond that class, when I was at NYU for law school, I was doing my laundry one day, yes, doing my laundry one day, and one of my classmates was in the room, and, we we always had debates, I wasn't one of the gunners in first year, but we were gonna have some debates.
Not sure I'm buying that, though.
Well, and I remember one of the white gentlemen who was in my class, we were both folding our laundry respectively, and he's like, dude, Lurie, I get it. I'm all for diversity. But like I learned in Hebrew school, I can't help take care of anybody else if I can't take care of myself. And I was like, wait, where did you learn? What did you learn and where did you learn it? And he begins telling me, he's a Jewish young man, he began telling me about Hebrew school, this phenomenal institution, initially created, I'm told by the research, by a Jewish woman by the name of Rebecca Gratz in the early 1800s. And it was a wonderful idea because what Rebecca Gratz and her sisters recognized was that you had young Jewish children coming from all across the world who didn't understand the same rituals. Not all of them spoke and could read the Torah. They didn't know the history, and that was very important to them. So looking to the Sunday school model, Rebecca Gratz and her sister friends decided to put together this amazing institution now known as Hebrew school. And this young brother was telling me that when he was from basically kindergarten on up until middle school, after school, not every day, it depends on, which community, but he would basically after school and on the weekends, he was going to Hebrew school in addition to K through 12 school, where he was learning their language, their history, how to read, the values of the system. And I was so intrigued by this, and it sort of set me on a journey, because I was like, we need that. We need that. And the reason I say that we need that is because one of the things I have learned is that our Jewish brothers and sisters would never have allowed Nazis to educate their children willingly. Think about what we talked about at the very beginning with the history of this country. Because once we get to the Nadir and Jim Crow, we get civil rights in 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education decision, which was vigorously resisted. Some of those consent decrees I mentioned are tied to that decision. We get the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which our lovely president talked about at the beginning in her remarks. And we've had from 1964 until 2024 a good run of integration. And it's lasted 5 times longer than Reconstruction did. And one of the things that we lost in that moment was the control of our children's education. Part of the reason the removal of Black history from all of these institutions has felt so palpable is because we have often, in many cases, abandoned our responsibility, and this is going to feel like a burn, but we have turned over the responsibility for holding our history to the hands and institutions of other people. I am bitterly upset about murals being taken down and museums being closed, but I'd be less upset if I felt like we had a sufficient Kujichagulia self-determination, for those of you who don't practice Kwanzaa. If we had a Kujichagulia approach to educating our own children, it wouldn't sting quite as bad. And so I think that in addition to not only recognizing that, yes, we pay taxes, and yes, we should have our history taught because it is our history, it is American history, absolutely. But recognizing the realities of white narcissism and nationalism in this country, it has been, I think, something that if we had an opportunity to do again, we should not approach the same way. And that's one of the reasons why I am a huge proponent of things like freedom schools, because when I was coming out of Penn State undergrad, before I came to NYU, I moved to Pittsburgh. We had done a whole bunch of building takeovers and whatnot at Penn State, and we were doing a whole lot of stuff, because there was a Klan activity there. He actually killed a Black man by the name of Don O'Connor, and the president of the university, it was a whole big thing. We had to take over a building for a whole week. It was a lot. So we left. We had to leave Penn State University under the armed guard of the new Black Panther Party and members of the Fruit of Islam, because the police had gotten our addresses and information, had released it. We were basically doxxed in the early 2020s, or early 2000s rather. And as a result of that, we couldn't go home. So we had to be protected by, and members of the NAACP as well came to the university to ensure that we had safe passage going home. We fled to Pittsburgh, and I know it sounds crazy, but we fled to Pittsburgh, and there I was able to help establish the first freedom school in the city of Pittsburgh under the leadership of Mother Sister Tamanika House, who is still there to this day, my elder. So what that taught me was, because freedom schools is phenomenal. It's a program that comes out of the Children's Defense Fund, and it's based on Freedom Summer, when after the Brown versus Board of Education decision took place, and then people realized, oh, we actually have to do this. What happened was you had all of these white communities that were basically closing down public schools because they would rather no one get educated if it meant their children had to share resources with Black children. And they would then reopen those schools as private church-based and religious-based institutions, which were really known as segregation academies, which is one of the things that is one of the reasons why vouchers are so important, because vouchers come out of that history. Wanting to use access to public dollars to pay for your children to go to school in spaces where they did not have to sit next to black people. We got to know the history. And so Freedom Schools was built on a recognition that in Freedom Summer in the 1960s, you had all of these schools closing down. People weren't getting access to resources. You had all of these volunteers coming from all across the country, going into the South, using like the Septima Clark model to use the Constitution and using all of these documents to not just teach civics and advocacy, but teaching people how to read, filling in gaps in knowledge and information. Freedom Schools is based on that model. It is phenomenal. And we would have children who were the ones getting kicked out, the ones who, had the suspension and the expulsion. You get them in a Freedom School where they're given culturally responsive materials, pictures and books and images and knowledge and language that reflects them, who they are, and they could be unapologetically black. Those same children who you could not get to sit still for 5 minutes in a classroom were writing essays, doing math, and figuring out how to think critically and becoming well-rounded members of the black community. It was almost like we were creating the black version of Hebrew school. So we have to have our own institutions because we have to be crystal clear about what this means. I have been asking my audience and my team at the Center for Law and Social Justice for the past 2 years now. I want you to imagine the 1964 Civil Rights Act has been repealed. They got the numbers. Trust it's coming. They've taken it up to the Supreme Court. Imagine that one piece of legislation that is still remaining from the 60 years of the civil rights movement. That legislation which bans discrimination in hiring, public schools, and in the accessibility of public accommodations. Imagine that law no longer exists, which means there is no longer any legal requirement to not be racist. And then I want you to think about all of the resources that our community consumes that we do not provide for ourselves. Now, when you no longer have a legal mandate to be equitable in the distribution of resources, and we see what happens when people no longer feel compelled to adhere to their higher angels. If it's gonna take us longer than a good solid week or one, let's say Black History Month, to be able to figure out how to replicate every single one of those systems, then what we have is a replication of an enslavement system. And so long as that is the case, we will forever be locked into this hierarchy where we are occupying the bottom rung. What that means is, in addition to fighting for this to be taught in schools, and yes, we absolutely should, I need every single faith-based institution. If you got 2.5% black people in that space, y'all need to either have a group, or if you in an all-black faith-based institution, why are you closed Monday through Saturday other than for gospel choir, YPWW, I'm sorry, I was Kojic, YPWW, and Wednesday night Bible study? We need to have those buildings open. We need to have every black-owned institution. If you are part of the Divine Nine, shout out to my sorors, the members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Where are our action committees? And I know we got our program soror. That's right. So we have to be clear that this is no longer time for us to depend on other people to do for us what the ancestors have always known we must do for ourselves. And because we're talking about education and institutions, can we say it now, or do we have to? Or do you want to give them a sneak peek? We got something planned.
Uh-oh. Wait. We have breaking news.
Well, I won't break it fully. In fact, Madam President, I'm going to pass this.
Come on, L-Joy.
So as a continuation of the Hazel Dukes Education Initiative, we are instituting a freedom school with NAACP. Which will be our first test and training ground here in the city. And then I'll be hat in hand across the country and raising money for us to continue to do that throughout the state, because as Lurie accurately mentioned, long should we rely on others to not only teach our history, but also to sustain ourselves. Lurie and I, we share the same thing, and we've said it in different ways, of just how crazy it is to hear someone say, they don't teach us our history. just think about that. Just think about that for a second. They don't teach us our history. Don't that sound crazy to you? But we've been saying it, right? We've been conditioned to see it, and because we have been, right, that integration that we talked about and pushing forward for the system that we pay into, that we are a part of, to honor our humanity. But I learned something. It was a switch I think that just like somebody walked by one day and just turned on. And that you do not have to prove your humanity or your dignity to anyone. And that switch changed how I approached going to elected officials, advocating on behalf of our community. No longer was my language about, well, you know, trying to pull on your heartstrings about the poor Black children, you know, who are going to bed hungry and things or whatever, trying to prick that, you know, the faith you say you follow or your emotional triggers or anything like that. I don't have to prove any of that to you. I am here at the Capitol. I am here at the state legislature. I am here, as I just told an audience for MLK weekend, when we're talking about advocating for those things, that's not their money.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are not begging someone for charity.
That's right.
The money is ours.
That's right.
And so I need that switch. I need you to not only turn the switch on for yourself, but I need you to just casually walk by sometimes and just turn it on for somebody else. This is not charity. Having the ability for everyone to have quality health care, because majority of the people who pay taxes into the system says, yeah, we want to cover everybody. We want to have universal health care. We want to have universal child care. We want those things. It is not a suggestion. This is why we are paying into the system, so that we can collectively benefit. And then once that switch is turned on for people, of that you are not begging for something, you are not a charity case. No, you are getting what you deserve and what you are demanding, right? And I had to have that conversation sometimes with elected officials, as you know, right? Because they act like it's their personal money. They act like the city budget, the state budget is coming out of their pocket. Ooh.
We're going to have some time for questions from the audience.
But, so when you are negotiating, when you are advocating, when you are doing that work, it was like, let's level set here, right? It is perfectly fine to say, Sister Borough President, you know, we elected you, and you're our representative, and I know that you can appoint people, and, you know, you do recommendations. This is what our district wants to see. This is what the Bronx wants to see. Now you go advocate for that. Now you go fight for that. Now you go, right? Because they are representatives for us. Something I say on my show is, how can someone represent you if they never hear from you? So you have to be in constant dialogue with the people who represent you, because the people who are wealthy understand this point. This is why they hire consultants. This is why they're hiring lobbyists. They have the same one individual vote as you do, but they magnify it by hiring consultants and lobbyists so they can stay in sister's face all the time, so that the only voice she hears are from the wealthy and from the other folks that's saying, you can't do that, you can't do that. And a weak-minded person would say, well, the only people I'm hearing from is them, right? Not like sis, because sis is going to be everywhere. And let me tell you something. I concur that she be everywhere, because sometimes I be seeing her, I'm like, how you here?
I be in Brooklyn.
Yeah, she be in Brooklyn. I'm like, why you don't even go here? But that constant, and we have been taught that we don't belong in those spaces. How dare you ask for this? Right? That is the reason why the language of a welfare recipient and the welfare, right, making it seem as if you are a charity case and you're demanding something that isn't due to you. When that switch is turned on, I tell people, put your shoulders back. You belong there, as Sis says. And so me coming to your office and saying, you represent me, maybe I didn't vote for you. Oh, well, you still represent me. This is what... And I'm quick to tell people, I was like, well, I didn't support my council member right now. I did not support him. I'd be like, I didn't support him. He was like, yeah, you said something in the press. I was like, yeah, but so let me talk to you about Livonia Avenue. And he was like, oh, you got something to say? Sir, do you not represent Hinsdale? Like, right? So once that switch is turned on and we have a different relationship and we see, again, giving ourselves permission to speak on behalf of ourselves and our community and our children. And so that is why we have to get back, not like leaving on the table that the system that we pay into should not also serve us, because it should. But at the same time, we have to be able to advocate and agitate to make sure that we have the things we need in our community as well.
And I would just say, thank you. It doesn't end there. I think there's two things that's really important, kind of summarizing some of the things that have been said. One is, and I say this all the time, your elected officials work for you. And so if you don't have your elected official's phone number on speed dial, Vanessa just called me earlier today, right? And we had a conversation. All these sisters here, we have each other's numbers. But if you don't know every elected official, and I mean every, both the appointed, the electeds, everybody's name, phone number, email in your phone, please make that your homework assignment. The professor and me is giving out homework assignments for Black History Month. Secondly, think about how you are spending your dollar. I spend my dollar in my community. Everybody here knows, I say if you want to meet me, you want to talk to me, you want to have a coffee, you want to have a dinner, you want to run an idea by me, pick my brain, I will see you in Harlem. Because my community needs the investment more than me getting in an Uber or getting on a subway and meeting you on 42nd Street or South Street Seaport. I love all those communities, but those residents spend their money in their districts. I will spend my money in mine. I also want to say that it's a two-way street. Once you elect someone, whether you voted for them or not, and they become your representative, that's when the real work begins. Your tax dollars make up the budget that they have, and that they will then be earmarking, benchmarking, using discretionary funds to distribute. And so if they don't know what's top of mind, it's not about telling your neighbor that the trash still hasn't been picked up from the snowstorm. It's about calling 311 and making sure that they register their complaints. It's about calling your city council member, and then calling your state senator, and then calling your assembly member, and then calling your borough president, calling your district leader, calling your state committee member, calling your community board. It is all the levers of government, and they should know you and you should know them, because it is up to us to make sure that we take care of our communities. And I want to just get something that Vanessa said earlier when you were talking about Aurelia. We take care of our communities. It is not something that is always documented. It's not something that is always celebrated. And I think that is why you end up with these stereotypes, right, of a welfare mom or, the person from public housing and all of the other tropes that come, is because we're doing the work, and they have to tell a narrative to take away from the fact that we are still resisting, that we are still achieving, that we are still moving forward, as Alphonso said earlier. They have to tell a narrative in the mainstream media to undermine. Why is it that people know or see, all of the worst? If there is someone who's committed a crime that is a person of color, you know their whole history. But yet there are people who have committed mass murders that a name may never be released or photo may never be released. So it's really important that we have to think about the reasoning behind why they are owning the media in order to own the narrative. And it's really important for us to think about how we are becoming consumers as opposed to creators, and how we are ceding our agency in the process, But Vanessa, I want to go back to you for a moment, because I really think it's important for people to think about what that relationship is. You said something earlier about how you'll show up for 10 people because those people will do the work. And it's really important that we think about how we're showing up, particularly in this moment. There's a lot of people, as I was saying earlier, that feel like they're exhausted. I don't want to show up for this. I don't want to show up for that. But we have caucus coming next weekend, if you don't know. It is the New York State Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus.
Applaud you for knowing all of the things. In order. Because I be like the Black, Puerto Rican, Dominican.
There's a couple of others. I don't hear indigenous. There's a couple of other
indigenous.
a couple of others missing, but yes, this is what I do for a living, so I do
Guatemalan.
know all of them. But there is caucus, which is an opportunity for any and everyone to come up to Albany. The elected officials' offices are opening, and to have time, if you didn't see them in their district, from February 13th to February 15th, to have an opportunity to meet your elected official. Doors are open for people to come. And can you just talk about, as someone who's been at the state level as well, what that process is like, what that relationship is like, and what you're able to achieve when you work in partnership with your elected officials?
Oh, absolutely. So when I say show up, I mean show up, right? And I mean meeting people where they are. I don't expect every resident of the borough that I represent to come to my office, which is number one, in a courthouse. There are metal detectors, right? There are all sorts of barriers that prevent immigrants, undocumented individuals from coming. So during the spring and summer season, I really am outside. I have summer office hours at the local subway. I show up at the farmer's market. You have to meet people where they are. Because even as I travel, I go to graduations, I'm at churches every Sunday, you're only getting a subset of your constituency, right? You're getting the ones that are connected, that are educated, that know somebody, that knows somebody, that knows someone, and they know how to reach you, right? Now we're seeing constituent services on social media. So yes, people will tag me on a corner that says the garbage can is overflowing. Why is it not picked up? And what do? I send that over to sanitation. Pick up the garbage, right? And we're doing constituent work like that now because that's the new era we have, and that's the mode of communication we have. So for me, it's really important that people see me all the time because they're only used to seeing elected officials during election time when you want something. This is a mutual partnership. I need the constituents of the Bronx just as much as they need me. They are my eyes and ears. They can tell me what's going on that block. When I roll up, what's going on in this apartment right here? Oh, Miss Gibson, let me tell you what's going on there, right? I love that. I love it because there are people that are ingrained in our borough that have lived their entire lives, and they have nowhere to go. Even if they wanted to move, many of them would not want to move. Our older adults are there for a reason, and they've seen so much. They deserve to stay. Even as we see neighborhoods changing, we want to make sure that we protect what's ours. You know, legacy matters. It matters when we protect our older people. Something that Eljoy said that just struck my attention for a second. You know, when you look at the new wave of elected officials, and respectfully, the younger generation, I understand. But we have to respect the older, seasoned members that have served for a really long time and not just push them out, right? Their history, their stories matter. I'm so grateful that I got into politics because someone like Aurelia Green saw fit to groom me so that if anything should happen, she stepped down, she resigned, she took another job, there would be someone like me that could step up. We don't groom young people like that anymore. We leave them out to run wild by themselves with no guidance, with no direction, with no standard. Standards matter. Quality still matters, folks. Right? And I feel like a lot of times because so many of our people are conditioned to not believe that voting matters, they sit home. And they're the loudest ones that complain about bad elected officials. Well, you were a part of that because you didn't vote, right? When you vote, you count. We have to vote for the census, for so many other things that we understand drive revenue and money into our boroughs. I represent a borough that has some of the lowest voting numbers out of the 5 boroughs, right? I think the only borough that I do beat is Staten Island.
Shout out to Staten Island. Staten Island's here.
Shout out to Staten Island. But I want to make sure that I want numbers like Brooklyn. I want numbers like Southeast Queens. I want numbers like that where people will say, you know what? I'm running for statewide. I'm running for national, federal office. I need to be in the Bronx. I can tell you the neighborhoods right now that elected officials and candidates go to in the Bronx because they know that's where the votes are. They don't travel to any other neighborhoods, and that's what people see. That's why they get discouraged, right? So for me, caucus weekends and legislative conferences are important. I go to caucus, I go to SOMOS, I go to every caucus because I represent that population. I don't just go to a black caucus, I go to the Latino, Hispanic caucus as well, as I learn a second language, as I navigate this work, because it's important to know the people you represent. The one thing that I always hear from my Latino community is that they appreciate that I embrace their language. So while I'm not fluent, I could talk enough to get by, for real. También que Dios te bendiga. And they appreciate that, right? La Presidenta, they appreciate that. They appreciate that because I respect their culture. I respect their nationality. I respect who they are, and I embrace it. So yes, I'm one of those. I raise almost every flag, including my own island of Trinidad, because it's important. It's important for the Caribbean Americans, the Latinos. It's important for everyone to feel connected, because everyone wants to know that in their elected officials, they can see themselves. It's important for them to say, no, Ms. Gibson, she may be African-American, but she shows up for us. She has our concerts, our salsa concerts. She embraces our Puerto Rican community, the Dominicano community. She embraces all of that, and it matters. So for me, the caucus weekends are about networking, and what do? We bring young people up to Albany. We bring My Brother's Keeper, My Sister's Keeper, my Bronx Youth Council. Young people need to be in these spaces. They need to see the possibilities. They need to see their dreams that can happen. If they see leadership that looks like them, then they know the possibilities are limitless, right? You cannot be what you cannot see. And for me, I need to make sure that all young people see their possibilities in all spaces so that they know that nothing is impossible for me. I can represent the hood, and I can leave the hood, get my degree, start my business, and come back to the hood and give back. Yes, you can. Everything is possible if we recognize the power that we have and we own the spaces that we are in. I often say, if your voting rights were not so important, there wouldn't be efforts to take them away. Seriously, and that's the case with everything, right?
Amen. It's important, as one of the title pieces is visibility, right? So thank you so much for talking about that, because you have to be visible from the block to the boardroom and back. I'm going to ask one final question before we open it up for questions from the audience, if there are any. And that is, what is your hope for 2026? We have an election cycle coming up that's going to be very important. We have local elections, right? Governor, AG, New York State Assembly, New York State Senate. We've got Congress. And so I'm just going to go around the room. I'm going to ask everybody to try to be brief. It's the last question of the panel. And I want to allow time for everyone in the room. There are microphones to the right and to the left. So if you're interested in asking a question, please feel free to come up to the microphone stands. And I'm just going to do round robin. So I'm going to start L. Joy and work our way around. That's right. For a tough question, I'm going to ask you to be brief. I know it's going to be a hard question.
My hope electorally or my hope in general?
I'm asked whichever one you prefer, my
Okay.
sister.
So my hope in general is that we magnify the organizers and the leaders that we have for us to increase not just turnout for an election, but increase in civic engagement in general. Because we spend a lot of time mobilizing for an election or mobilizing to elect a person, and then it tapers off. And in order for us to effectuate the change that is necessary in our communities, in order for us to exert Black power in New York State, it requires us to have 24/7, 365 civic engagement.
Sustainable, yes. My sister.
So I don't want to be the Denisha Downer, but I am very clear about the precarious nature of the moment that we are in right now. It's one of the challenges of being a history buff. I was an Africana Studies major, so these are the things that keep me up at night. My prayer and my hope and my earnest desire is that regardless of electoral outcomes, regardless of the realities that we're facing, my hope is that our people would do the thing that I ask my audience to do every single day, which is to figure out how your purpose aligns with the needs of our people, and then walk in it with your back straight. My hope and my prayer is that we will take those 7 beautiful principles out of the Kwanzaa week, and that we will focus on making them every single day. Today is actually Imani, because Kwanzaa started on a Friday this year, and so every day on my show, every single day is Everyday Kwanzaa. Today is Imani, that's the faith principle. But my prayer is that we would figure out how to overcome the shackles mentally. I saw recently the Gil Scott-Heron interview where he was talking about the revolution will not be televised, and we often mistakenly think that it's because the cameras weren't there, and he said, no, the revolution won't be televised because the revolution has to start in your mind.
Amen.
And once the revolution has started in your mind, everything else is secondary. That's where it actually begins, the light on. And so my prayer is that we would figure out how to have some umoja, some unity, where we remember to strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and race. My prayer would be that we then move to day 2 and have some kujichagulia, some self-determination, where we define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves, educate, defend, and heal, and employ ourselves. Then I would pray that we would tap into our ujima, our collective work and responsibility, where we would make our brothers and sisters and our friends and families' problems our problems and solve them together. And then we can't do any of that without tapping into that ujamaa. We got to have some cooperative economics, so she ain't hat in hand begging people to help us with the Freedom School. We're going to have some shared cooperative economics where we're building and maintaining our own stores, shops, and other businesses and profiting from them together. All of this, of course, has to be guided by purpose, where we started, where we have our NIA, where our collective vocation is the building and developing of our collective people, and so that we can restore our people to their traditional greatness. We got to tap into that creativity, that kaumba, because it is our obligation to leave this world a more beautiful and beneficial place than it was when we inherited it. And that brings us to today, Imani, faith. Faith in our people, and our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. If we could do those things, everything else, important though it may be, elections, important though they may be, politicals and policies, important though they may be, but if we could do those things, we could make the rest of them non-factors in ways that I don't think a lot, and that's where the magic is. So that would be my hope.
Let the crowd say ashe.
Ashe, ashe.
Okay, sister, I'm coming to you.
So similarly, just 2 electorally, of course, I need us to capture the House and the Senate and take that back in the majority, because I know that it is a source of so much opportunity and we don't have to fight as we are doing now, which is a full-time job. And then secondly, I desire that we build generational wealth. We build Black economic development. We have more ownership in our homes, in our communities, in our businesses, and we do not have to rely on these government programs that keep us in a slave mentality, where we rely on SNAP and we rely on programs that are safety nets that sometimes become a life sentence because we have been conditioned to live in poverty to meet an income eligibility just so we can keep our Section 8. Generational wealth and hiring locally and shopping local in our communities is how I want to see us build generational wealth.
And I'm just going to add to that. I would love to see in my lifetime 100% voter participation from Black and brown communities. I think we need to move from sound bites to substance and not be so addicted to thinking that there is an easy solution to everything. So on that note, I want to thank the members of my panel for sharing their wisdom and their insights with us. And we're going to go to questions starting over here, then we'll bounce over there, and then we'll go back, and then we'll start to wrap up. Can you please tell me your name and what borough or area you're from?
Sorry.
It's okay. Are you okay? Okay. Awesome. Thank you for the assistance.
My name is Priya. I live in Harlem. And thank you so much for this evening, all of you wonderful, amazing ladies who do so much for the community. We really appreciate you. My quick question is more, I think, for Lurie. I am representing myself as a pro se litigant in a discrimination retaliation case, former employer. And I'm finding it very difficult to find resources at the state level. There's a lot more for the EEOC, the federal level. So I had to do a lot of everything on my own, you know, a lot of research, looking up things, whatever it takes. I am at the point now where I have a court date. And so I'm actually kind of proud of myself that I was able to do that pro se this far. But I don't know if the Center for Law and Social Justice has any resources that I might be able to exhaust before my case to find out, you know, make sure I'm doing all the right things to win the case.
So congratulations, first of all, I hate that you have to even navigate this. So congratulations to you on moving your case this far. It is extraordinarily challenging to do, even when you've gone to law school. So the fact that you're doing it, really prayer for your success. I would suggest that you look at a number of additional resources, and you may have already, but the Commission on Human Rights here in New York City is a great source of and support. I was told that there are members of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association here as well who have a referral system that can provide you direct legal services or connect you with folks who can do direct legal services. We do impact litigation. Okay. So our cases tend to be cases that have an impact on broad swaths of the community as opposed to direct legal services. But we do have a legal consultation program. So at worst case scenario, you could come in and meet with one of our attorneys and at least be referred to folks who might be able to help you out. But if you've already got a court date, time is of the essence. I would suggest reach out to our office, info@clsj.org, and we can see if we can help get you pointed in the right direction.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for this evening.
And you can come see me after. I'm also happy to give you a list of other resources.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your bravery. If you could please state your name and where you're from.
Hello, can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Hi. Good evening. My name is Barbara Williams, and I'm from Brooklyn. Barbara. So it's more of giving flowers for me. I want to give my flowers to you guys on the stage. I'm familiar with 3 of you on the stage, had a floor 4, but now I'm in love with all 4 of you. As a little girl, I didn't know that I was black. I saw the color of my skin, but I really didn't know I was black until I joined the NAACP of Brooklyn. Joy, I'm not gonna cry. So Joy really took me under her wing, and she showed me so much about my history. And it was so wonderful and beautiful. And I served as her vice president at one point. And she taught me how to have a voice and how to speak for my people in my community. And so I went back to my community and I realized that there were a lot of people who didn't know and didn't see themselves as being black. And they weren't being seen in their community by the people who we elected. So because of the strength that I got from the 3 people I knew, Ny and Lurie and L-Joy, I put a meeting together and I told the electeds that we don't see ourselves in the community. So it's mostly Latinos, but there are some blacks. And I gave them 1 year to get their acts together. I said, you got 1 year to show that we are here. So you have Black History Month or you have Juneteenth. They came back a year later and they started to celebrate us. This made the 4th year. I say that it's important that you know your electeds, but it's more important that they know you. And it's thanks to you women on the stage that I do that. My name is Barbara Williams, and I am unapologetically black.
Amen.
Ashe. Beautiful. I love you from the Bronx. Mwah. Ashe.
Don't make us cry. Whew. Thank you, Barbara.
That just reminds us why this work is so important.
Yes, and thank you to Guttman, UC, and NAACP, why this is so important. I had the honor of working with Barbara on our last census effort. Want to remind everybody the census is coming again, and we need to be ready when it does. I'm going to go over here. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? My name is Kaisha. I'm also a Brooklyn member of the NAACP.
Thank you.
I'm also a member of Lurie's Book Club, and we read so
Closer
many.
to the mic.
Hi, Ojoy. I'm also a member of Lurie's Book Club. We read so many books, I can't even begin to name them. But I have a hypothetical question. I'm 75 years old. I've been through this before. Why would I become involved in politics before? How do they affect me at this point? I stay in the house, I mind my business. I would like each person on the panel to answer this question, please.
I'm gonna take this one. And y'all, she's not saying she's 75.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
See how y'all don't pay attention? No, I heard y'all murmuring.
And only LJ will answer so we can move the questions along. Only LJ.
So the question, if you didn't hear, was for someone, maybe they're 75, and don't make the connection as to why they should be involved in politics, and it doesn't affect their everyday life. They're not concerned about it. This is why organizing and having people who actually love Black people and care for us is important. Because we are used to now, particularly our communities, we are used to the organizers and the consultants and others who drop down in our community, and they have a particular bent, a particular bill they're trying to get passed, a particular person they're trying to get elected, or others. And they are using organizing and using the tools of organizing to tell you what you ought to want, rather than the model that is the model of true organizing, which is that you are helping people to recognize their power, and then it's self-determination. So you as an organizer, I've organized in Milwaukee, I've organized in Virginia, in Ohio, and other places, but I don't live in those places. I can't tell them what they should have, or what you should want, or who your electors is. Even when I did so as a consultant for a party, because I always recognized I was Black first, and I want to be able, I always think of Black people as a collective family and a collective house, and I want to be able to be welcomed home. And so even if I'm working in the past for a candidate, for a party, for an institution, whatever, I'm not going to sway from my values. I'm not going to sway from how I was raised. And so while I may go to empower you and engage with you so that there is greater participation, I am not going to say that I know what's better for you than what you know for yourself and your community. And so the first step for true organizers is asking the question, what does your community need? What does your block need? What does your building need? And then helping to walk people through the process of how they use, whether it's electoral power or other types of political power, in order for you to meet that need. Because there is nowhere that we can go in our communities, except for a very small community, and even that community needs help right now. There is no Black community you can go to and nobody needs nothing. Because even the wealthy community I was about to say, they all need help because their mortgages was too high, and half of them lost their jobs because they were cut from the federal administration. So they looking for jobs or looking for a way to make sure they don't lose their homes. Yep. And so that is where you start, and then make the connection to people, how your political engagement, how your political power, how your voice is connected to the thing that you want to see done in your community or in your building or in your block. Once you do that, people are hooked. And that's why I advise, don't start with a presidential election. Don't start with electing the first black or doing whatever. Start with those small things.
Thank you. We are, I believe, at time, so I just want to double check with Robert because I saw a little time's up. We have 2 questions here and 2 questions here. Are we going to take the questions? Do we have time for them, or we only have time for
Can they
2
all
questions?
say them, and then instead of us all responding, we
Go
can
ahead.
go, yeah.
All right, I think we going over here. If you can just tell me your name and your question.
Hi, I'm Marcus Howard from Harlem.
Ha-ha, yes! Woo! Sorry, that took a little bit of time.
My question is essentially, I know we're talking about advocacy and voting, but really about infant mortality is something that's really important in the black and brown community. So my question was pretty much for everyone, but really geared towards Borough President Gibson and understanding more about what avenues or initiatives are in place to break the 5.7% infant mortality rate that's presently in the Bronx. Are there, initiatives around maternal health education, around community health baby showers? So just trying to understand more about initiatives to impact maternal health. Thank you.
Number 1 priority, addressing the maternal mortality and morbidity rate. Black and Latino women, 9.2 times more likely to die due to pregnancy-related complications because they don't listen to black women's voices. When we say we're going through something, folks don't listen to us. So we are preparing to reopen a Bronx-based birthing center. We were the first in the city to open a birthing center. Back in 1988, it closed. There's only 2 left in the state. We're getting over the hitches of the difficulty of opening one. We have a maternal health care consortium of birth workers, doulas, and midwives. I have a reproductive health clinic today called Mariam Clinic. I have $5 million from the governor to start the capital work in building that out. We are not playing because black and Latina women have died because no one raised this as a call to action and attention. But yet, if it were happening to other women, there would have been a crisis already. And I recognize that. Infant mortality as well. We are building a Bronx Healthy Partnership. I have an organization that does community baby showers. You can come to my office. We give all baby products out to families and mothers when it comes to services and programs. We do all of that. And so that is a number 1 priority for us.
Thank you. I believe we have to wrap up because we're at 8 o'clock. And so I'm just going to look. Hold on 1 second. There's one here and one there. We've got one here, one there, and one there. Okay, I'm going to take the student first, if that's okay. Thank you for your patience. I want to take the student first. And I want to also shout out our Girl Scouts. I don't know if they're still here, if they might have had to go home. But we had some amazing Girl Scouts that were here. All right, I'm going to take the student, and then we'll check in again on time. Please come to the mic and tell us your name.
Hello,
and what
my
borough.
name is Janine. I prefer Juju. I just wanted to know what exactly does NAACP stand for? And as an aspiring journalist, like how can I be more politically inclined and politically involved in my community?
Very quick. NAACP stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That's 1. 2, as an aspiring journalist, what you can do is begin to document and tell the story of your people and your lens right now. And to also, you can see Charles that's sitting right here from our Civic Engagement Committee, and our 2nd Vice President is here as well. And we need help in telling black people's stories of what they are experiencing, what their hopes and dreams are. And so what you can do right now, even while you're in school, is to tell black stories.
With dignity, I will. Thank you.
I'm just going to pause right there for one moment. We are at time. This has been a very fruitful conversation. All of the speakers are going to come down so we can come to you and talk to you about your question offline. I'm going to make sure that you have your answers and your resources. I just want to thank my sisters on this panel for always being unapologetically black. Can we please give them a round of applause? I want to thank the CUNY Graduate Center. I want to thank CUNY Guttman. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank our featured speakers and guests. And I just want to have Charles give some remarks very quickly. We can exit. Thank you, Charles.
No, you're welcome. Okay, so I'm sorry, you guys, just real quick. Can we give them another round of applause? They were amazing, 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 amazing. So just real quick, you guys, my name's Charles Johnson. I serve as the Political Action Chair for the NAACP New York State Conference under the leadership of Madam President L. Joy Williams. And as we close this program, I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to the NAACP New York State Conference and my branch, the NAACP Mid-Manhattan branch. Yes. Thank you all for the continuous work in protecting voter rights and advancing civil rights to ensure equity, visibility, and representation in our communities. Thank you as well to Guttman Community College and the President DeLone. Yes, thank you for hosting this impactful event and for underscoring the importance of exercising our right to vote and to ensure representation in government and community leadership. And really seriously, you guys, a special thanks to Robert Pagan, the senior advisor. Yes. Thank you, Robert, for collaborating with me on this event. And for Ny Whitaker. Ny, thank you so much for your moderating. Thank you. This was an important conversation, y'all. Also want to thank Jewel Jones and our Mid-Manhattan branch president, Kendall Reed, for their leadership, insight, contributions, and to making tonight's discussion meaningful. And finally, you guys, just real quick, if you have not registered to vote, we have tables set up in the lobby, so please be sure to stop by, take a form, and continue to be unapologetically black, y'all. So thank you, have a good night, and God bless.